it going, everybody? So we have a fun review today as we're talking Sonic the Hedgehog 3. The wait finally is over. It's surreal that the end of 2024 is already upon us. These last couple years in particular, it feels like we've been eating pretty darn good. There have been a few rough patches along the way, you know, stuff like Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom. These last few years, though, between the video games, Knuckles got his own show, Sonic Prime is pretty solid, and on top of all of that, you have this very successful trilogy of live-action films. It's a great time to be a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Of course, because I'm a lifelong Sonic fan, I do try my hardest to go into these movies as unbiased as I can. I do mean it when I say that this sequel by far is the best installment of the entire trilogy. It's honestly the perfect culmination of everything that they've built up to this point with Team Sonic. The camaraderie among Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails feels incredibly genuine and wholesome. It feels a lot of a hilarious banter, particularly between Sonic and Knuckles. There's a handful of lines of dialogue between the two of them, while they're trying their best to get along and be a team, but still butting heads, that I was laughing so hard at. On the flip side, you have Tails, who continues to be incredibly adorable while working on all these gadgets for the team. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 does also throw in some big emotions with the big revelations they have to overcome into that third act. Best of all, however, is the action sequences in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Anybody that loves Sonic the Hedgehog is going to be incredibly hyped with these action set pieces where they all get to work together as a team. I don't know how they do it, but it feels like each and every film they try their best to up the ante and make the action sequences better than the last. Even in Sonic 3, every sequence feels bigger and better. There's this electrifying energy to each one, and they feel very balanced. Both Team Sonic and Shadow get a lot of time to shine here and showcase their unique power sets. They do make sure to also hammer home the fact that Shadow is far stronger than all of them combined. I mean, the first time they interact, he kicks all of their asses. It doesn't really get much better until later on in the film. You gotta talk about Shadow the Hedgehog a little bit more. Ever since he debuted back in Sonic Adventure 2, he has been one of my personal favorite characters of the entire franchise. And once they announced that Keanu Reeves is going to be voicing the character after that cameo in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I knew that he would do his best to bring justice to the character, and I do feel like he is perfect as Shadow the Hedgehog. The style and coolness factor is prevalent anytime he's on screen. Keanu Reeves already has that type of aura around him, and then you throw that on top of Shadow the Hedgehog, and he's just even cooler somehow. One of the more unexpected things that I liked a lot about Shadow the Hedgehog in this is they sprinkle in some humor that I thought was actually quite good. There's a sequence where Shadow scares Knuckles like he's Michael Myers. There's another sequence that I laughed really hard at between him and Agent Stone. And Agent Stone's trying to make guacamole with Shadow, and Shadow calls it rage guac. Outside of all this, though, I love how beautifully they capture the emotions of Shadow. The inner turmoil he has, the sadness, and the raw rage he's fueled by from the tragic backstory that most of us know going in between him and Maria. Even if you're someone that goes into this not having that sort of knowledge of them from Sonic Adventure 2, it does a fantastic job showcasing their origin in such a moving, emotional way. There's a really great sequence between him and Sonic, and they have this big heart-to-heart conversation that genuinely pulled on my heartstrings. In general, the themes resonate pretty deeply throughout Sonic the Hedgehog 3 from both Shadow and Sonic. Both of them are incredibly similar, each having experienced great loss. Each of them deal with their pain in very different ways. So it hits home with me thematically how Sonic the Hedgehog 3 deals with not holding on to hatred and revenge and allowing that to consume you in the end. I'm completely loving the evolution in every single installment that Jim Carrey has had as Eggman. In the very beginning, I really didn't feel like he was that much like the character, even though I enjoyed his performance, and it seems like his goal in every single installment is to get more and more like Dr. Robotnik from the video games. Seriously though, I feel like he's getting better and better in each and every sequel, and this is his best performance yet. Jim Carrey's goofiness factor is out of this world in this one. It definitely feels like some of that comes from the fact that he's playing two characters in this. He's playing Dr. Robotnik and also his grandfather, who for some reason is still alive even though he's 100+ years old. We're kind of just expected to accept the fact that he's apparently over 100+ years old and he's doing all this stuff in the movie. Like, yes, the movie isn't realistic by any means. The majority of the cast are CGI animals that talk. There's literally no way that Dr. Gerald Robotnik should still be alive if he's actually that old. Regardless, however, I love the shenanigans between the two of them. I was dying laughing at several of the different dialogue exchanges they had with one another. There's one sequence in particular that I thought was the funniest of them all, and that's when they decide to have this crazy, ridiculous, over-the-top dance number with each other. Admittedly, the dynamic between the two of them and the story as it unfolds feels very predictable predictable. You kind of have an idea on what exactly is transpiring, even though Dr. Robotnik has no idea. All throughout the movie, I was having an incredibly great time. The film kicks off strong, immediately thrusting you into the action, giving you lots of Shadow and Team Sonic. But I do feel like the film drags significantly in the middle portion of the film. Much of that momentum slows down pretty much when the movie shifts into a heist movie for a little bit and Tom and Maddie get involved. I hate harping on the human characters in these movies, but it really is true that the human characters usually are the worst parts of these movies. Thankfully, they're not really that heavily featured in this one compared to some of the other installments, but I do think that is probably the weakest part of the entire story. Speaking of humans, I like Kristen Ritter a lot. I was really intrigued when they cast her in the film, who exactly she was going to play. Unless she ends up coming back for some type of future installment, film, or show, I'm kind of understandably confused why they cast her in the movie at all. Don't get me wrong, her performance here is fine, but it's incredibly insignificant as this random person at gun that's barely even in the movie. By now, it's been made incredibly clear just how much the people behind these movies actually love the games and respect them as a medium, unlike some other movies we've seen this year. I'm looking at you, Borderlands. And that accuracy couldn't be more true once we get into that third act of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. When I tell you how insanely hyped I was in the third act, how incredibly accurate it is to some of the greatest Sonic and Shadow moments ever, then on top of that, they mix in one of my favorite songs of the entire franchise, one of the most iconic songs. In that moment, when we got to that sequence with Shadow and Sonic, I felt like I was ascending out of my seat. That also applies to the post-credit scene. There's two post-credit scenes. There's one at the very, very tail end of the credits, and there's one that's like midway through. The one that's midway through is much bigger and more vital to the future of the franchise, in my opinion. Both of them are actually pretty important, but you're going to be a lot more hyped at the mid-credit scenes and what's introduced and where it's probably going to lead in a Sonic 4. All in all, I love Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's an action-packed, energetic, heartfelt love letter to this franchise and continues to perfectly elevate all of these characters, capping off an amazing video game trilogy. Who would have thought one day we'd actually have a genuinely amazing trilogy of video game adaptations? We were lucky if we got one good video game movie back in the day, and we're gonna actually have a good video game movie trilogy. Make sure you share your thoughts down below, though. Once you get a chance, check out Sonic the Hedgehog 3. What'd you think of the film? Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? Thank you guys, as always, checking out videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure you like on the video and also subscribe to the channel to update views, reactions, unboxings, and more. But next time, I'll see you guys later.